How's it going, people? Welcome to Runescape lore. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Majharrat by the name of Karshai. Now, Karshai, well, he's a little bit different. As you know, the Majharrat are kind of known to be like this all-powerful artillery kind of military unit, and generally kind of evil in nature or just completely and utterly obsessed with power. Karshai is an oddball in that respect. If you don't know about Karshai, he's actually a neutral Majara, and he's been neutral for a very, very long time. What I mean by that is, he neither sides with Zaros nor with Zamorak. Instead, he seems to have chosen a third path, and was actually unaware of his own identity for a vast period of time, it seems. We know this because in the Karshai's Troubles mini-quest, it's actually revealed that Karshai has been disguised as Karshai the Deathless Fremi. And that pretty much shows, after witnessing those cutscenes, that Karshai is genuinely neutral, and the other Majharrat, perhaps because of his inactivity or the fact that he's kind of kept to himself, avoiding his brothers and sisters, it seems to have made the other Majharrat view Karshai as weak. But simultaneously to this though, at the same time, his brothers and sisters are also trying to make him join them to their side, in turn increasing their power, and hopefully they can conquer their enemies, their brothers and sisters following the other faction. So, because he's weak, the Majharrat consider him pointless and may actually choose to sacrifice him. But at the same time, he holds kind of a key value, since if he does join their faction, it will increase their power, albeit by a small amount. Although, to be totally honest, we don't actually know how powerful Karshai is. So let's get into the history a little bit, some of the facts. Now, if you've seen any other ones, then I'm sure you already know some of this, but I'm going to go as if you've never seen this before or even heard of it. So, in the Second Age, the Beneficent god by the name of Ictharion, which you may have known from a recent quest, he's the god of death. He decided to bring all of the Majharrat to Gielinor, and he did this by taking them from their home realm known as freneskae, and this was in order to fight against the Zarosian incursion happening during the wars of the Second Age. Now, again, different to his brothers and sisters, Karshai was actually one of the most excited at this prospect of actually being able to leave freneskae, as Gielinor, from what he knew, was a much kinder realm than freneskae was. So, in turn, all the Majharrat, Karshai included, ended up being loyal servants of this god of death for many years. It was at this time that Zaros was actually trying to expand his already vast empire, spanning a large portion of Gielinor, down towards the south. This campaign ended up being known as the Caridian-Zarosian War, and it was this massive force from Zaros that actually forced Ictharion's hand to try and bring these Majharrat in as a backup. So, as soon as they arrived, Ictharion did indeed put the Majharrat to use, and sent them against Zaros' armies. And the Majharrat, being as powerful as they are, forced Zaros' armies back. Simply, Zaros could no longer advance. This actually went on for many years, and the Majharrat served under their master Ictharion. Their warlike abilities, albeit frowned upon by Ictharion, especially the acts of one known as freneskae. Zaros, however, soon realised the immense usefulness and power of these Majharrat, and indeed did begin to rally them towards his side, at the promise of even more violence, immense combat, and much more bloodshed. The Majharrat slowly began to defect. freneskae was in fact the very first to defect, simply due to a quarrel with Ictharin. Ictharin did not want the Majara to abuse the enemy in war, and the Majara, being bloodthirsty and generally kind of immensely violent and powerful, didn't particularly like this. freneskae didn't like it at all. He was the most upset by this decision. And with freneskae leaving, slowly the other Majara began to trickle over to Zaros' side. Eventually, the Majara did indeed desert the Menephiscian pantheon, and they did indeed join forces with Zaros, immediately occupying high ranks amongst his armies even. At the end of the Second Age though, a treacherous plot formed by Zamorak was slowly being brought into action. Zamorak had slowly been working behind the scenes, gathering more and more allies and powerful artifacts to try and take down Zaros. He wanted more power. And, whether due to fate or purposeful interactions with the gods, Zamorak did indeed bring his plan into action. Upon obtaining the Staff of Armadyl as well as the Stone of Jazz, he set his plan into action. Zamorak and his allies eventually stormed upon Zaros, and during the fight, Zamorak did indeed actually manage to mortally wound Zaros, which in turn made Zaros flee from Gielinor. Simultaneously, Zamorak did actually take some of Zaros' power and indeed turned from a Majara into a god. It was at this sight and the knowledge the other gods appeared suddenly, and seeing that Zaros was finally defeated, as these gods have been fighting against him and losing for a very long time, they were likely very pleased at this prospect. But now they had another problem within their hands. Zamorak, a bloodthirsty Majara, has now gained godly powers. So of course, the first act to come out of their mouths was to banish Zamorak, under the words of killing and slaying one of their own. So Zamorak was banished. It was at this point that this happened that the Majara forces eventually split into two factions. There were those that followed Zamorak, and there were those that followed Zaros. This created a giant rift between the former allies, and even through the rejuvenation rituals would from then on be based upon Zarosian versus Zamorakian. Now we don't know particularly why or for sure, but judging from his actions, it's most likely that due to these events that transpired, and that Karshai witnessing the slaughter between his brothers and sisters, and the terrible treachery between them, and actually finally seeing exactly what they were capable of, that he decided that a third option must be his choice. He must have decided that balance or simply watching from neutral ground would be a better way to maintain peace between his brothers and sisters. Now we don't know why he thought becoming neutral would be the best option at this point. Maybe perhaps as an overseer, or acting as kinda like a separate referee between the two factions, which they could then refer to. We have no idea. But soon enough, Karshai did indeed soon to start to play less and less of a role amongst the Majara meetings. And actually he did this until he eventually pretty much became a background character, kinda like a silent watcher. But this did come with a large drawback. The Majara rank each other in power and power alone, and Karshai, simply being the silent mouthpiece in the corner, showing no power or any kind of inclination towards gaining more power, soon began to be viewed as weak. And Karshai, knowing this, could very well lead to him becoming the next sacrifice. According to the second set of Zamorgul's notes, Karshai kind of an average-powered Majara, and as average temperament, and simply survived by going with the majority during rituals. Although Karshai did manage to avoid being sacrificed through this method, it did indeed leave him with no close allies, which Zamorgul deemed a potentially dangerous situation. And indeed, from the actions we've witnessed between the Majharrat, I'm inclined to agree. At some point though, Karshai started experimenting with a mineral named Bane. He wanted to see if it could be enhanced and used to make a fearsome weapon, and discovered that it could be tuned to be particularly harmful to particular types of creatures. Using this knowledge, Karshai forged a heavy and mostly powerful battle axe. He named this battle axe the Balmung. He decided to tune the Bane ore so it would be particularly devastating towards Dagonoths. But to do so, he needed a part of a creature's body. As such, Karshai then set off on a small ship from the north to the Fremennik Isles to collect some blood. On the way though, he was attacked by an assassin at sea. According to Karshai, he could not identify his assailant, but the battle was intense enough to destroy his entire ship. As the fight raged on, Karshai panicked, fearing that he would indeed be captured and then sacrificed. He then chose to decide to transform into a human, using his shapeshifting abilities. Knowing that this act of transforming into a human, that he would still be traceable by other Majharrat, even though he was still disguised. Karshai furthered his plan and actually erased his own memory, and quickly created a toy ship with the indication that he is a Majharrat, so that he could eventually remember who he was, should he later need it. Unaware that he is actually a Majharrat, his kin would be unable to locate him. His attacker had eventually been driven off in the battle, but not before branding the symbol of Zamorak on Karshai's naked chest. Unconscious and his mission incomplete, Karshai drifted off, and according to the story told by Chieftain Brunt of the Fremennik, he was found leagues away from the nearest ship or shore. Unwilling to let the seaborne stranger die needlessly, Brunt brought the shaken Karshai to Relica. While the unfinished Balmung axe came into the hands of the royal family of etc. It is unknown though how long Karshai's body was at sea. He could have been there from the era of the last rejuvenation ritual to the time when Brunt found him, unable to remember anything. Karshai did indeed try to mutter his name, which the Fremennik interpreted as Koshkai. Koshkai was eventually taken care of by a shoemaker by the name of Ursa, and impressed by his sudden recovery from his miserable state, the Fremennik dubbed him Koshkai the Deathless. After being integrated into Fremennik society, fighting Koshkai became one of the trials young Fremenniks had to pass in order to achieve adulthood. Karshai was placed in an underground arena, and to win Thorvald the warrior's vote, young Fremennik from then on had to pass his test on bravery and fight Koshkai to the death. They would of course not be killed, but the point was to show no fear. Karshai's plan had actually worked, for his existence was indeed lost to the other Majharrat. Azanadra, a follower of Zaros, imprisoned during the late God Wars, mentioned that when he escaped the Jaldrak pyramid, he was unable to detect Karshai. In Azanadra's own words, "Karshai may yet live. I can sense no trace of his death upon this world, but nor can I sense his pulse. Perhaps his neutrality has earned him a prison such as mine was." Karshai, acting as Koshkai, soon became a valued member of Fremennik, even their champion, and was one of the commanders during the battle for Relica. Slaying hundreds of invading Dagonoth for his supposed homeland, Koshkai was later among the small party that was to defeat the Dagonoth mother. He was placed to guard the entrance to her lair while the others, as well as an adventurer who'd passed the trial, Prince Brand, and Prince Astrid of Miscellanea and Baba Yaga of the Lunar Isle Moon Clan would defeat her sentinels and eventually the mother herself. As the party were about to advance, Karshai called them back for all the immensely powerful Dagonath kings had arrived. He was easily able to hold his own, while Brand, Astrid and Baba Yaga hurried back, leaving the adventurer to fight the mother alone. After an extensive battle, Karshai and Baba Yaga were able to drive back the kings deeper into the Dagonath caves. And after the unfortunate murders of Astrid and Brand, Karshai returned to his regular duties within Relica. It should also be said that the adventurer was actually given the unfinished Balmung early by the Queen Sigrid of Etc., who actually described it as a powerful Dagonath-slaying axe and a family heirloom. By using it in battle, the Balmung came into contact with Dagonath blood, and, unknown to Karshai, the enchantment was eventually completed. Late in the 5th Age, in the year of 169, Karshai's lack of memory had begun to trouble him. After the 18th ritual of rejuvenation that had occurred that year, his mind kept being bugged by images of a blossoming tree south of Relica. So, with this visage in mind, he tried to chop it down, but it was to no avail. Karshai addressed the adventurer who had fought the Dagonath to bring their Balmung axe that they had received from the Queen Sigrid before the battle, and asked him to chop down the tree in his stead. The adventurer actually succeeded, and, strangely enough, found a strange chest without a keyhole. By mere touch, Karshai unlocked it to reveal a toy ship within. It was written on the sail that Karshai would feel in his bones when the time has come. After being exposed to water, though, the ship opened to reveal a white gem in a compartment. Upon touching this gem, Karshai's memory magically returned to him, and indeed he remembered everything that had happened and transformed back to his majara form. Finding out that his long time as fremennik has permanently altered his appearance, strangely enough. Within seconds of his transformation back into a majara, Inakra soon arrived to the scene. Now able to sense him again, she claimed that she came to check if he was truly Karshai. Her Zerosian rival, Akthanikos, also arrived momentarily later, supposedly for the same reason. However, both knew that they both wished to claim Karshai for their respective factions. A furious Karshai demanded that they depart instantly, proclaiming his desire for balance. And, in turn, the Majara, as you would expect, warned him not to count on the god's support in the future, and reluctantly teleported away. He was also noted to have been spotted at Sliske's Grand Ascendancy, although he was not allowed to enter. One thing to note, as a bit of a side note, that is all the history for Karshai. That before he recovered his memories, players actually managed to fight Karshai in the form of Koshkai, as part of the fremennik trials. Although he has 4 attackable stages, the player can win a vote by simply defeating him 3 times because the test was about bravery and not strength. Additionally, his combat level isn't actually shown. However, he will get progressively stronger, and gain even more life, defense and strength every time he's defeated. Although the 4th time is difficult, it's not impossible to defeat him. If he is defeated, the player will be rewarded with a fremennik blade, and he can be fought again after the quest as a Class E boss within the Dominion Tower. He will have the same moves and abilities as he did have in the quest, but now you'll actually be able to fight him with armor and weapons. Always a nice thing. Get some revenge. Other than that, that is pretty much Karshai's story. So, like I said, he's a bit of an oddball. Unlike the others, he doesn't follow any particular god. Instead, he kind of stands on the sidelines waiting to see what happens and perhaps may choose to jump in at an opportune time. either to prevent something from happening, or he may eventually decide one of the factions if he's eventually convinced by one of the Majharrat. From what it seems though, after witnessing his outburst at the mini-quest, it would seem that Karshai is kind of stuck with his neutrality. He seems to be happy within his position, although whether or not he will survive the next few rejuvenation rituals, well, that's anyone's guess. But with that said, that is pretty much everything you need to know about Karshai. So, with that, I hope you all enjoyed and found it interesting. So, until next time people, I will catch you all later. Have a good one.